Please to take your seats while I'm going to go ahead and ask somebody to join me for introductions. I'm going to ask Sara Willis to join me. She's going to have the pleasure of introducing the next panel. Sara Willis, Vice President and Private Client Advisor at Bernstein Private Wealth Management. She's here today representing, however, 50/50 Women on Boards Houston, a global 501c3 focused on driving diversity and inclusion on Russell 3000 boards. As we all know, leadership is one of the many pathways to create sustainable change within organizations and communities at large. Today, on International Women's Day, 50/50 Women on Boards is launching a new initiative, 50 Women to Watch for 50 Boards. The aim is to reverse corporate boards lacking female board directors by spotlighting and promoting women who are board ready across our networks within partners and companies seeking qualified female executives ready to serve on board. With that, join me in welcoming Sara Willis, again representing 50/50. Thank you, Sara.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Sara Willis, for those of you that might not know me, and I'm just very excited to be here with such an incredible and inspiring group of women and men this afternoon for a topic that I've always held very near and dear to my heart, leadership. What that truly means is unique to each individual, but I think it's most fascinating to me because we never stop learning how to be a fantastic leader. And today, I have the pleasure and honor of introducing these four amazing women who I know have served as pillars within their own organizations and communities at large, really proving to us what it takes to lead by example. And they're here today to share their journey to achievement. So please bear with me as I introduce each of them individually. First off, we have Major Katie Cook of the United States Marine Corps Reserve. Major Cook was the first ever female pilot to perform with the U.S. Navy Blue Angels, who we all know. Just wait, it gets better. During her tenure, she served the Marine Corps in active duty as the C-130 pilot for 12 years, where she accumulated over 1,400 flight hours, of which 400 were in combat. But she didn't stop there. Following that, she transitioned to the USMC Reserves and is now the Senior Director of Sales Strategy for Salesforce's Global Public Sector, where she leads the Global Operational Excellence team. Our second panelist is Dr. Lara Shekerdemian, MD, MHA, Pediatrician-In-Chief, and Chair of Department of Pediatrics at the Texas Children's Hospital Baylor College of Medicine. Dr. Shekerdemian has over 25 years of experience caring for critically ill children and conducting clinical research that spans 3 continents. In addition, she has established the first ever Pediatric Department's Equity Committee in 2018, and since then has helped to grow the number of women physicians 5-fold. Our third panelist is Pamela Skaufel, the current Vice President of Global Procurement at ExxonMobil. Pamela joins us today having held diverse set of leadership roles throughout her tenured career, including the Director of Aviation and Marine Lubricants, Global Services Planning Manager, also serving as a key member of the procurement management team for Esso Exploration and Production out of Chad, as well as Exxon's Supply and Trading Organization. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce my dear, dear friend and today's moderator, Georganne Hodges. Georganne is a global energy executive and board member with over 35 years of industry experience. Currently, Georganne serves as the board director and chairman of Audit, Risk, and Nominating Committee of TransAlta Renewables, and most recently served as the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Motiva Enterprises, a Saudi Aramco company. So one more time for these amazing panelists, and I'll hand it over to Georganne.
Thank you, Sara. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. Thank you, Sara, for the wonderful introductions, and welcome, ladies. So leadership, it feels like we've been talking a little bit about leadership all day, right? Because a lot of things that we've been talking about are about leadership. And I think Ronnie did an excellent job of sort of getting us in that mindset about what does that mean for us. Because it could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? And I think you just heard about these incredible ladies. With Sonia, when I got the bios, I was like, what in the world? So I am honored and thrilled actually to be here to talk about this topic with these ladies and hear a little bit about their journey. Because when I think about leadership and when I looked at y'all's bios, two things really came to my mind. One is that it truly is a journey. I think Sara just said it's unique to everybody. And it might be linear, it might be nonlinear. I've got 3 adult kids that are starting their careers, and I think they're going to be nonlinear, and that's okay, right? I mean, meaning they're going to take twists and turns and go one direction and then potentially go another direction. And so I really want to hear about your journeys to leadership, as well as your styles. And then the second thing that can't help but strike you when you look at this group is leadership as a service, or servant leadership, right? Because when I look at all of you, the service to our country, to our communities, to your employees, absolutely amazing. So I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about how you think about that as well. So with that, why don't we kick it off? And Pamela, we'll start with you, and just really tell us, I think, kind of an open-ended question here about your own journey, about your own leadership journey, and how you think about it.
Well, thank you. Firstly, I'm going to start by saying I have major imposter syndrome with my fellow panelists today. So that's another topic, then we'll talk about that later. So on that theme, I guess my leadership came from, I feel like the most unlikely of places, but on hindsight now, it's probably obvious. So I grew up as the eldest of 6 girls in Ireland. And, when I look back, I was probably the least likely in my community to succeed, right? And my leadership, started as, being the eldest child, of course, taking care of all of your siblings. My parents, of course, didn't have an education past age 16, but I had this love of life and curiosity and, energetic. And, I think my energy and enthusiasm actually, brought me a long way. So I actually felt invincible. And I think that's a true characteristic of leadership is, feeling that sense of, I can really do this. And, the other thing I would just give an example of is, I had an all-girls education. And, I didn't think anybody said that today, but when you go to an all-girls school, you actually have no idea that there's things that you cannot do, honestly. When I went to college, so I did my degree in petroleum geoscience, and it was the first time I ever got into an environment where I was the only one. I'm like, what? There are no women here? I just came from an all-girls school. What happened here? So that invincibility carried me a long way, and little did I know that was the path to ExxonMobil ultimately, my fellow ExxonMobil table over there, shout out. And they will all testify, as well as I did, that, again, being the only one, Paula talked about it, others talked about it, gave me that armor, I call it, to succeed. And I guess I'll stop there, Georganne, but that was a real key to my leadership.
Oh, that's fantastic. Agree with you there. All right, Dr. Lara, is that okay?
No, drop the doctor.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay. All right,
Thanks so much.
Same question to you. Tell us about your leadership journey.
So a lot, I think, has happened in my career by accident or serendipity. I think I was the first, I'm from the UK, just across the water from Ireland, obviously. Went to an all-girls school as well. And I was let loose at university, at medical school. But honestly, I learned a lot of resilience came from my background. So I'm the first generation to be born to migrant parents who were in the Armenian diaspora. They were brought up in Cyprus. So again, they could have had amazing educations, but they didn't have the opportunity. So my sister and I, she's 4 years older than me. She's my hero, my first and probably greatest role model in life. We just wanted to achieve and do what our parents could have done hands down, but never had the opportunity. And I think we learned from them that resilience. So I guess I had the drive, but a lot of my career, the early days, it was being in a very fortunate position, right place, right time, with the right guidance. All of my early mentors were male giants in my field of pediatric heart disease and intensive care. And I was pretty much the only woman when I was in training, and certainly in my first staff position, which was back in the UK and then in Australia, where I was for 9 years. I never felt different, and this is where I kind of look back and I think, my sister and I talk about the same. She's a barrister, so she's an attorney in the courts in the UK. And I wish I had been more conscious of being the only woman at the time. It was a very, very strange feeling, and I kind of took stock pretty much when I came to the US from Australia. I was the head of the ICU there. I was 1 woman, 7 guys. And I never felt different. I felt very comfortable, but I kind of followed a status quo. And I think in retrospect, I was just comfortable acting a bit like the guys and not really sort of championing a change of view or a change of look. When I came here, you'd think Australia and the US might be the reverse in the way the perceptions. It was completely different. And people here, I came here to a team when I led the ICU here, where I was the 6th woman. We had 17 guys. And now that unit is predominantly female, which has been a real achievement. But I became very, very aware of it almost overnight when I walked into that, how it was a privilege to be a female leader, how people regarded me with a different kind of perspective. But it was that overwhelming privilege, and I thought, right, this is it. You know, I have to make change, but not so deliberate that you sort of ostracize other people. There's nothing wrong with being a man in the field of medicine. But when we look at pediatrics, 75% of pediatric trainees are now women. But probably, I think I'm the 3rd chair in the country who is a woman out of, I don't know, probably a couple of hundred. So we have a very, very long way to go. But my journey has been, it's right place, right time, and perseverance, and probably my mother on one shoulder and my father on the other, and my sister just above my head saying, just go for it, go for it.
Wow. I would tell you, there definitely is something to that, you know, just pick up on your point, right place, right time. And then when you're there and an opportunity is presented, take it. Take it. That's one of the things I always tell when I'm speaking to women or anybody, right? Someone puts a stretch opportunity in front of you. Don't let fear get in your way. Take it. You can do it. Anyway, just had to add that in. Awesome. Major Cook, we'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear a little bit from you about your journey and then how you think about sort of your style. And first of all, thank you for your service, your style in the military, and then your style at Salesforce as well.
Sure, yeah, thank you for having me. When I look out at the crowd, I'm kind of feel like one of these things is not like the other one, because I'm, you know, I'm in the uniform and everyone else is beautifully dressed today, but thank you for including me in this, and I will say, please don't even mention imposter syndrome, because I absolutely have it too with all these amazing women and men here. I have 3 children under 5, so if you live in the Houston area and have 3 children under 5, you've spent time at Texas Children's, so thank you for that. But yes, in terms of my leadership journey, so I will say that it was rocky at first. I made 2 really major decisions when I was a young leader that if I could go back and change, I absolutely would, but I use it as a learning point when I mentor young women now. And those 2 changes, or 2 things that I regret, are 1, I was not my own authentic self. The Marine Corps is 9% women, 9%. And that's an improvement since I've been in, right? So it's 9% women. And so when I showed up, I thought I had to be one of the guys, right? I would lead like that. I would talk like that. I would present myself like that in that hard, cold manner that comes with the stereotypical Marine. And because I was showing up not as myself every day, I struggled with that. I was not myself. I struggled with that. And I think the people that I was leading could see through the facade. And they knew I wasn't authentically there for them. And so I was already losing my subordinates the first step that I came in, not as Katie, right? And then I would say the second one that I regret is that I was treating everyone the same. Leadership needs to be tailored to your subordinate. You cannot show up and treat everybody the same. Some people like when they do something wrong, respond best to like the disappointed mom, right? I had multiple Marines break down in my office just by saying, Sergeant, I was really disappointed in that decision. Ah, immediately start crying, right? Immediately start crying. And then you have people who, if they look at you and you're like, oh, look at that tiny girl, there's no way she could lead me. And then you yoke them up and are like, hey, and get in their face, and they respond better to that. There's different types of leadership, and you need to approach everyone because everyone comes, as we said earlier in the diversity panel, comes from a different background, has different experiences growing up, and thus they respond to being led in different manners. And so you need to be able to tailor your leadership style to the most effective way of leading that one person and connecting with that one person. So I would say that is 2 regrets that I have that I've changed since, and I feel like I'm a more effective leader now. What's awesome is my role at Salesforce is actually my team of 10. I have 7 women and 3 men, so completely reverse of what the Marine Corps was. And it was a learning experience for me because I was predominantly used to leading men. And so leading women, and I wouldn't say that I approach them any differently. As I realize that maybe women have a different outlook on life sometimes, obviously, but they approach problem solving a little bit differently. I think they don't advocate for themselves as well as men do, and so these are typical skills that I think sometimes come naturally to men that I like to develop in my female subordinates or directs a lot more. And so, I would say my leadership was a little bit rocky in the beginning, but I think I figured it out in time. So
Sounds like you did. Sounds like you did. Yeah, that was awesome. And isn't there something about that being yourself, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys have all experienced that. Anytime you try to be somebody else, whether it's in a leadership role or even in just a relationship with someone,
Yep.
it's seen through so easily, and so don't do that. Be who you are. Be who you are, right? You were made the way you are for a reason. Be who you are. Okay, we're going to pick up on some of the themes, Katie, that you just talked about in a second about because you started to touch on supporting other women, and we'll get to that in a second. But before we do that, though, obstacles, bumps, we've all had, and we've been heard, it's one of the, I think some of the best stories I've heard from the other panelists earlier today were what obstacles they faced and what did they do to sort of pick themselves up and get back on track when those things happen, and they do. And so if you guys could tell us a little bit about that part of your journeys. We'll start with you, Pamela.
So I was actually thinking about this recently, and I was cleaning out my home office, and I found a bunch of letters that I had kept every single letter that was ever written to me. And for people now in the email age, you're never going to have that lovely experience. So I would encourage everyone to write letters. So I found letters that I had written as a college student to my mom.
Oh, wow.
And she obviously had put them all somewhere. She's still alive, by the way. So, but she had obviously kept them somewhere, and I found them years ago, maybe when I went home, and I literally had not read them. And when I read those letters, I almost broke down because there was years of anguish where I didn't know that I was doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And I had written those down in a way that I can't do this degree, I'm not interested in it, or I doubt myself, or why am I doing this? And I'm like, how did I spend 2 years writing letters about that I can't do this? And yet I still did, right? So I clearly blocked that out of my mind. And that goes back to some of my first points, which was I just made myself do it, right? And if it's one thing that you learn as an eldest child is it's not all pretty, right? And you have to babysit and earn money when you're 6 years old, right? But I made myself do it. And I realized after reading a lot of those letters that the most important thing that I have done or have learned or have, kind of overcome as a leader is just making myself do it. Because I don't know if I had gone through those things again that I could ever have done it, right? So I think it's really important to reflect back on all those bumps and turns. And then when I start putting everything after that, and I'm thinking, all the other things that happened in my life, right? How did I get through those? I'm like, I just blanked them out. It's kind of like childbirth. I had 2 kids. I forgot about it and I moved on, right? I mean, my children are beautiful, but you know what I mean. But it's like you just make yourself go on. And so I just, Georganne, thank you for reminding me about that, because those twists and turns, by the way, they're always going to happen. And it's just how you deal with them and how you move on.
That's how you move on. Thank you for that. Very, very impactful. Laura.
So I'm going to talk about tea again, and it's not big just because I'm English, but it was very nice spread out there. But when our previous speaker mentioned tea, I was thinking back to my very first 6 months after I became a doctor. I was very green. I was like just 23, and I was an intern in surgery, and it was my job to make tea at the end of the ward round with my attending, who was a 60-something-year-old gentleman, of course, because only men did surgery in those days. And that was my job. I never thought twice about it. I used to carry his briefcase during rounds. I never thought twice about it. And when I was at the end of my 6 months with him, he kind of looked at me, and he always used to call me dear. And dear in England is not the term of endearment that it might be here. It's quite affectionate there. It's kind of patronising, isn't it? And I was kind of going to him for career advice, because at that stage I was thinking, I really like using my hands. Maybe I want to be a surgeon or whatever. And he looked at me and said, my dear, he said, you're good with your hands. Because we used to sit and hold livers in one direction for 3 hours at a time in the operating room back then. But he said, but, why don't you just do something easy, like be a pediatrician, so that you can go home to your husband and children and cook them dinner after work, verbatim. And this was in about 1991, and that was okay. I took his advice. And I couldn't be happier in the career I chose, and I did it for the right reasons. I mean, I didn't become a pediatrician because I wanted to be at home in fact, my husband's home before me every single night these days. But that was, when I look back, I think I wish I dealt with that differently. But I used that, and maybe if I'd been a bit older, I would have done. But I used that to counsel female trainees and male trainees as to what is not okay anymore. Don't do what I did. Speak out, get out of, feel a little bit uncomfortable, because it will bring you into a completely different comfort zone.
Thank you so much. Katie, obstacles, same question to you.
So I think obstacles obviously are 2 different ones, right? Internal obstacles, external obstacles. Those internal obstacles I already kind of mentioned, my 2 regrets that I had when it came to leadership. And so I think imposter syndrome is another one of those obstacles. You need to overcome it. You need to push through those type of things. External obstacles are things that maybe are outside of your control. And I faced many of those in the Marine Corps. And I know that there's some Marine Corps moms in here, maybe some veterans themselves. And so I'm not trying to poo-poo on the Marine Corps at all. I love it. I obviously am still wearing the uniform 14, 15 years later, and so I'm going to continue to wear the uniform. But we can be better. We can be better. I'll tell I'm trying not to traumatize you. I'll tell a quick story. When I got pregnant with my first child, I waited till I was 10 weeks to make sure that the baby was viable before I told my CO. And my CO went and grabbed my medical record, looked in it, found out I was pregnant, and then read it to my whole squadron. So those are the type of things that I've faced as in external obstacles, right? And this was in 2014, right? So this was not in 1991. And so there are still things facing women like that out there, right? There are still obstacles for that. And I think we're going to get to how do you bring other women along. But I was 27 at the time when this was going on. I was not a mom at the time. I had not been through some of the experiences that I've been through now. And now 35-year-old Katie would go back and punch a lot more people in the face, right? I absolutely would. And so I have grown up, and I think that's what that is, and we'll probably dig into this a little bit more. I wish I had a female mentor. I wish I had a female mentor because I had no one to go to and say, is this wrong? Right? In my mind, I was ghosting myself, right? Like, oh, maybe they're allowed to do this. Maybe that's completely acceptable. And I didn't have another more senior woman to say, hey, I'm bouncing this idea off you. Is this inappropriate? Should I have taken this the wrong way? Am I being overly sensitive? I didn't have a sounding board. I did not have a sounding board. And that's why I really encourage mentorship, particularly in young women early on, and find a female mentor. Find a female mentor. Yes, I think male mentors are great, and that you can build a whole board of directors, right? You don't need to have one mentor, but you have to have a female if you are a young female, because you will get in that situation where you're second-guessing yourself and you're laying in your bed at night or you're in the shower having a fight with your shampoo bottles, right? and you wish you had somebody to say, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Am I reading into this situation wrong? And you want that validation of somebody who's more experienced than you to be like, you are correct, or maybe we can change the narrative. Maybe we can look at it from a different lens. So that's what I would say.
That is awesome. And I'm going to change the order of my questions based upon what you said. I had 2 more questions. But now I do want to pick up on, so the last question we were going to end on really was about this concept of how do women support other women. But because you opened that door, let's go to it first. And I wanted to comment about the mentor thing as well. Mentors at all stages of life. On the Big Brother, Big Sister board, and I believe in mentors for children and young adults as well, just to get exposure to what they might not in their communities. But certainly in your career, in your professional setting, having them. And we need the men. I wanted to say thank you to the men that are here today. They're obviously supporting women. We need them. I will tell you, most of my career, because I, like you, in the energy industry, was largely the only, or close to the only most of my career, and I had mostly men mentors when I think back on it, and it was just what there was in the late 80s, early 90s, et cetera. That's just how it was. But they were very supportive, and I do believe that men are there for us and will continue to be there for us. But I also do believe what you're saying, that you need someone that's been through it yourself. You need a female. So let's talk a little bit. I'd like to hear from each of you guys. How do you think, because I heard someone mention earlier today that sometimes women don't support other women, and sometimes that does happen. Sometimes there's a competitive environment or some sort of horse race or something that's causing that. But I think by and large, we do and we need to. But tips from you guys on how can we support the women in this room, other women, to get where we all need them to be?
One of the ways that we can support other women is by setting examples, right? And I like, some of the conversations earlier about bringing your true, authentic self. Because, I am always myself, right? So I don't know if you noticed, right, but I'm wearing like silver sneakers and earlier in my career, I will never forget this, right? So I was 21, 22 years old. I was working in Aberdeen, and, it's a big male-dominated, oil-filled environment. And I had just come back from a vacation in Japan. Oh my gosh, I love Japan. And I came back with all these crazy clothes, and I was full of color, and I went into the office in my brand new outfit. And you don't know how many people looked at me and said, you cannot wear that here. Now, I was not wearing anything inappropriate, I will tell you that, but I did not fit the mold of the gray and the blue and the pinstripe suit and all of that. I wasn't wearing that. I was a very colorful employee, right? And I went home that night and cried and changed my outfit and went back to, my Next, which is a British store, my Next, work suit. And I probably did that for a couple of years. And as I went on in my career, I decided I needed to be an example for other women that you can be yourself at work. And so I am the one, my team will tell you, I'm the one that goes to work in my sneakers, right? I'm not afraid to, be myself in meetings. If I've had a bad day, people know I've had a bad day. And if I have a great day, people know I have a good day, right? And the reason I say that is because we spend so much time at work. And I spend more time at work than I do with my kids. And I know many people like that can empathize here, right? So I feel like I don't have time to change personalities, right? I just don't. And so I come to work like who I am. I was at Sara Week, which is a big energy thing, and I was wearing my green pants yesterday. The amount of people that looked at me and went, oh, she's wearing green pants. You know, it's like I felt already that I was being questioned about who I am in this environment. But I'm doing that because I want other women to know that you don't have to be a certain mold to work in a certain industry. It's about what you bring to the workplace, the passion that you bring, your unique capabilities, and again, bringing out the best in people. And I truly, truly believe that you support other women by showing them, right, who they can be and what you can achieve.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Laura, over to you.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
I've got 2 points to make. One is about the clothes. So in my level at the hospital, there are 8 physician leaders, and 6 of us are six are male, and there's 2 women. And I've only been in this role for just under a year, about 10 months. And I've recently, through my executive coach, and I'm very open and free to talk freely about that because it's to make me a better leader in a huge environment. And I recently had a 360, or had just come to the end of a 360, and I was reading through some of the comments, and a lot of it was flattering, and then there's opportunities, as usual, as there always is. There was one comment, and somebody had made about, I'm a relatively informal person at work. I like flatter hierarchy. I lived in Australia for 10 years, where medical students called me Lara, hence the no doctor. Okay. I'm relatively kind of casual, but I can switch if I absolutely have to. And one of the comments was, you know, she doesn't, it was in a nice way, I think, doesn't necessarily quite fit the mold. Let's see how that goes. And ... And I quite like the comment. I mean, just because of not a suit, or, you know, just not fitting the sort of the expectations. I think the other thing I wanted to mention was you talked about being genuine and honest and vulnerable. I think I would say anyone who knows me as a leader would describe me as pretty transparent, and I like to show I'm able to, and maybe you reach a certain age and you know, when you reach middle age, you care less about what people say about you, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I know you're not middle aged, so I'm not looking.
I'll get there, don't worry,
sorry.
the kids age me.
And, you know, I was a single parent through choice for the first 6 years of Max's life, and I'm very honest about it, very open about it, because why not? If you want children, have them. And but also because I think, again, it just makes people realize that you are human, that they can look on you as perhaps a role model for creating some sort of a work-life balance. And my life is crazy, but I'm able to enjoy having a child and throw myself into work, and you make sure you have a network of support and nannies and whatever else it takes to be able to create that. But I do think vulnerability is an important thing. I think men need to show it much more as well. It's okay to show your flaws or give a little bit away, because you get so much more back in return.
Yeah, that's good. Again, awesome. Katie, to you.
So to add on to those wonderful sentiments, I'm along the same lines. I think setting the example is one, and using your voice. So I'll tell a story for each. So setting the example, absolutely go along with what they said. People are going to look to you to set the standard, right? If you are working late, if you're sending emails at 3 a.m, guess what they expect that they need to do? Send emails at 3 a.m, right? So you need to be the one that sets the standard. And so I will tell you a quick story about this. So I have 3 children. I mentioned that. My oldest 2 were 14 months apart. Didn't plan that. And after the birth of my second son, I had severe postpartum depression. Severe. And to the point where I needed medication. I needed to get into counseling to basically save my relationship with my child and my family. And to save myself. And so I sought out that help through all the resources that we have in the Marine Corps. And I was a company commander at the time. So it was me leading 150 Marines running a small airfield. And I was the only woman. And so every year, many of you have probably heard the statistic of 22 veterans or active duty military kill themselves a day. So we have an issue with suicide in our community. And so we have suicide prevention training every 6 months. So we were coming up on it, and I was kind of torn up, like, do I admit that I've been seeking help myself for stuff? I'm already the quote-unquote weaker sex, right? I'm leading all men. Do I open that door? And so I ended up showing that vulnerability and said, this is the stuff that I've been doing. I've been on medication. I'm feeling great now. My situation with my son is a lot better, and the Marine Corps is not punishing me for seeking help. They're actually rewarding me and saying, you can stay in command and you can do all this stuff, and you're still mission effective even though you're seeking help for yourself. And within 48 hours, I had 4 Marines in my office telling me they were going to seek mental health help.
Wow.
And so I don't necessarily think that was me. I think it was just a matter of setting the precedent that this is okay. It's okay to work on yourself. This isn't something that I'm going to judge you for. And that's building trust in your team, right? You can build trust and make a safe space to whether it's say that you have mental health issues, or to say, like, hey, I screwed up on this one assignment, and I wanted to let you guys know that I screwed up on it so you don't make the same mistake, right? Building that trust and that morale and that kind of environment in your team. So that's one story. The second one is using your voice, right? There are dozens of very powerful women and men in this room that are leaders very high up in their situation. If there are women underneath you that are facing issues that you can fix, you are in the wrong. Use your voice. So I'll give you an example. In the Marine Corps, we did not have an order until maybe 4 years ago that required a pumping space for women. Right? And it was when I was still active duty, so this was probably in 2019. There were junior women in my command that had nowhere to pump. I was offering my office for people to pump in, right? And I specifically remember this is after the birth of my second child. I'm hooked up to the pump, right? The big one, right? Doing my duty as a mom, sitting there. I have a sign on the door that's like, don't come in, I'm pumping, right? But there's no lock on these doors because we're in a government building, right? Here comes my sergeant major. Any of you who have had any military experience, sergeant major, or like been in the Marine Corps for like 20 years, this dude is like high and tight, typical Marine, busting the door, ma'am, I need you, oh my God, And I'm just sitting there like there's that, can I help you now, sergeant major? It's like, oh my God, ma'am, I'm so sorry. And then I use that as my voice, right? Like, neither of us want this situation again, right? So why don't we find a real solution? Let's find a pumping space. Let's adhere to the order that the Marine Corps just passed to find a place that has a sink and a lock and all these other things, right? And so if you are a senior woman in this room and you hear women that are junior to you having these issues, of I'm being treated differently, the bathroom isn't stocked with toilet paper, very small things, you need to use your voice to advocate for them, right? And I think you're, quintupling or whatever the amount of female medical personnel is phenomenal, because that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be bringing people along, right? And that's how we started the day today, and I think that's a great sentiment.
Perfect. And I actually think that's how we'll end it. Use your voice, support other women. The future is bright, ladies. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you.